Good so far. Final thing regarding the evaluations of this class. I believe before the IT issues, you got an email link which doesn't work anymore. And if you have submitted, all has been deleted due to the IT issues. So if you got the link again, please go ahead and feel free to submit your evaluations. That's gonna be helpful for future classes. Make sense? Now we can move ahead to start chapter 30. Any questions from the last class? Any calculations or anything? So, in the last class, we learned total risk, right? How can we estimate total risk? Method. What is the method to estimate total risk? This is we have not learned so far. What we learned from the last class? How to estimate total risk. Absolutely. So when you talk about total risk, we are talking about the standard deviation. We are talking about the entered volatility of the asset return. Entered volatility. Right? It has two components. Total risk has two components. One is known as systematic, and the other is known as unsystematic. This is measured by data. So when you talk about systematic risk and you want to estimate it, the proxy, the method we use to estimate systematic risk is data. Now, what is a systematic risk? So when you talk about systematic risk, it means if there is any risk on the entire economy, for that reason, all the assets, all the stocks, all the instruments in the economy will gonna be affected. That is systematic risk. Let's say during March 2020 to June 2020. Can you remember what happened? Can you remember what happened? March 2020, June. Yes, and economic competition. You can think about the government entirely shut down everything, right? We almost stopped going to like our regular stores. We only bought the very basic things we need, right? We almost stopped traveling, right? We almost stopped doing all the other things that we used to do other than basics for living, right? Everything was shut down, production was kind of closed, government was kind of like confused what to do, right? If you think carefully during that time, the entire economy was affected. It's not about only the banking industry, it's not about only the tourism industry, it's about everyone got affected, right? If that is the situations. Systematic risk. Now, if you think about last 6 months or last 8 months, what is going on in the economy? Or last 1 year?
Recession.
Recession, why? Why? Why there is recession? What is the what causing the recession?
Something to do with, so a bit of something to do with oil or gas. That's what I.
Okay, okay. Anyone else?
Because there's two like consecutive periods of negative GDP growth.
That's the definition of a recession. So there's a recession going on. That's true. There's a definition of recession. It's like so-called recession because it's not like officially explicitly we are admitting the word recession, right? But long story short, even if there is no recession, there is a slowdown, right? At least a slowdown for sure. Why? What causing the slowdown? So when you go to Walmart, do you think money is sufficient to buy product right now? No. Okay, what it is called? Inflation. So if you look carefully for the last 1 year or more, there is a persistent rise in the price level, inflation. To fight with the inflation, what the Fed is doing.
Lowering interest rates or raising interest rates.
Okay. Anything else you want to mention, anyone? Raising interest rate? What is the impact of raising interest rate in the economy? Yeah, we have three. Feel free. We all can talk to them.
People are gonna purchase those.
People know why?
You'll save more.
Okay, good point. Absolutely. Because if bank is giving, so let's say bank money market funds are giving like 4 to 5%. If I don't need anything, I'll save, right? But what is the other implication? There's one more implication. So one of the implication is I'm not purchasing more, it's not needed, right? Save more, we can purchase tomorrow, earn some interest. So that is reducing what? Consumption. Reduction in consumption is not a good sign. That thing for GDP, right? What is the other implication? For the economy. One minute, that's one of the implications. Drop in consumption. What is the other implication for the economy?
There's less money flowing into these, so companies will need to raise prices in order to keep their profit levels where they were.
Okay, same thing. Reducing consumption, right? Reduction in consumption, absolutely. What are the other implications? But good point, good discussion. So let's say you are a business, you want to borrow. What is the change in your borrowing? Emily?
You have less of the cash flow coming in from the reductions of consumption, or you don't have to borrow more.
Why I should borrow more? If I have less cash flow coming, then I should not have good amount of projects, right? Why should I borrow more? So think about this way. If the interest rate is high, if I want to borrow, should I be borrowing at a higher rate or a lower rate? Interest rate is high in the economy. If I go and borrow, should I be borrowing at a higher rate or at a lower rate? Interest rate is high in the economy.
Lower,
Why?
so then don't pay as much interest.
Interest is high in the economy. Right now, if you want to borrow for your house, it's more than 6%, which used to be 3 to 4% during COVID, because the interest rate is high. If the interest rate is high in the economy, then bank has to charge you more if you want to borrow. It's not about if you're making the deposit, bank is giving you more, but it's also about bank is charging you more because the interest regime went up. Make sense? So let's say it used to be 2% during COVID. If you want to make deposit, bank will give more, let's say 0%. But if you want to borrow, bank will charge more, let's say 3%. But now the entire regime went up. Bank is willing to give you 3% if you want to make deposit, but bank will charge you 6% if you want to borrow. So if the required rate of return is more, should we have more positive NPV project or less positive NPV project? When the required rate of return is more.
If your rate is more, then less projects are gonna meet your criteria.
Absolutely. So if you have less projects that meet your criteria, do you wanna be able to take more projects? Definitely no, right? Do you think you should be able to maximize of the shareholders' wealth? Should be less than before, right? Because now you have less projects to undertake to maximize shareholders' wealth. So that means that's a bad sign for the economy. And if this is a bad sign for the economy, this is a bad sign for the entire economy, right? All the asset classes. It's not about one asset class. So when we are talking about any risk factor, and the risk factor that affect all the asset classes, or almost all the asset classes in the economy, system. How can we measure? Beta. We're going to talk about it. What is beta? Now, there are so many different names of this one. Also known as market risk. Also known as non or undiversifiable risk. So systematic risk is a kind of risk that is for the entire economy, all the asset classes. Also known as market risk, also known as undiversifiable risk, also known as non-diversifiable risk. You can think about this is the risk if you want to invest. You cannot diversify, you have to take it. You have to take it. And you should be compensated for this risk. You should be. In the last couple of classes, we're talking about when you think about any projects, you have to think about the risk factor, right? So it needs to be compensated for the risk factor. This is the risk you should be compensated for. If you invest in a project that has higher systematic risk, you require more return from that project. If you invest in a project that has lower systematic risk, you require lower return from that project. Make sense? Now, unsystematic risk. So this is a kind of risk that is only applicable to certain assets, certain, not every. And let's think about this way. When there was a Russian and Ukrainian war, okay? There are a couple of things gonna affect it, right? Oil price, right? And Russia and Ukraine, they were like producer of a lot of different raw materials. Let's say Ukraine is one of the largest producer of raw materials that needed to produce chip. And that's why the business of Intel was greatly affected because they don't have that raw material to produce chip. So in that situation, forget about due to Russian and Ukrainian war got affected. Forget about that. Just think about this way. Due to the Russian and Ukraine war, the raw materials of chip got affected. So what is the implications? Chip producing companies are affected. All those industries that are dependent on chip, let's say car manufacturing, computer manufacturing, let's say cell phone, smartphone manufacturing companies, they're affected. But do you think for this, our consumer goods are affected? bread, butter, rice, are they affected? Agriculture or tourism affected? So this is a kind of risk that is very specific to certain asset classes, not the entire economy. So when we say there is a risk factor, and due to that, certain asset classes are affected, that is unsystematic risk. So you can think about when there is any political issue going on among countries, or when there is any labor strike, some specific industries are affected, right? Unsystematic. It also has a lot of names. Diversifiable risk, firm specific risk, or asset specific risk. So unsystematic risk, you can diversify, you can eliminate. And that's why you should not be compensated for unsystematic risk. You should not. So can you remember in the last class when you are measuring portfolio beta? Can you remember? And the formula was weight 1 squared, P square, weight 1, weight 2, sigma 1, sigma 2, correlation. Can you remember this term? What does it mean? What was correlation? Very important topic in the field of finance when we talk about portfolio return, portfolio management. Yes.
There would be either like a positive or negative one, or a number that shows the correlation between the variables.
Right. So basically, you can think about how two assets in the perspective of finance, right? How two investments move, right? Now, if you look at your expected return formula, if you look at your portfolio expected return formula, can you see any correlation from there? Go and check your last note. If you look at your portfolio expected return formula, is there any correlation term? You find any portfolio expected return? Yes, no. Did you find any correlation terms in a portfolio expected return formula? No correlation. Did you find any correlation in your portfolio expected return formula? When you calculate portfolio expected return, do we need the correlation term? Yes or no? Sure. Expected return of portfolio is a function of weight 1, expected return 1, weight 2, expected return 2, right? Is there any correlation? Is there any? No, right? But is there a correlation, the X factor? So correlation could be +1, -1, or 0, anywhere, right? Anywhere. So we learned that when the correlation is -1, correlation is -1, we can reduce the risk, right? But return is never effective. We can only reduce risk by choosing portfolios, choosing assets that are negatively correlated, right? So the idea is, if you choose more assets, those are negatively correlated. In bad times, one of the assets may perform bad, but because of negative correlation, the other one should not perform bad. This is giving you diversification benefits. But if they are positively correlated, in bad times, both will perform bad. You are not getting diversification benefits. So if you choose what is that slide? Okay. Let's say you choose to own 50 stocks from the tech industry. Your portfolio is not diversified. Because of any shock, the entire tech industry is going to be affected. But if you choose stocks from different industries, you choose something from consumer goods, something from automobile, something from tech, then because of any shock, your entire portfolio is not going to be affected. And this is called diversification benefit. So the idea is, when you allocate your portfolio, in different asset classes, lots of different asset classes. This is your total risk. Your total risk is going down, 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 down. You are only able to eliminate unsystematic, diversifiable, firm specific, or asset specific, same thing, right? That component of the risk, you are never able to eliminate systematic, market, or undiversified risk. And you should be compensated for this risk. Make sense? Any questions? Total risk. Let's see. Systematic we talked about, unsystematic we talked about. We talked about diversification. And we talked about what is the benefits of diversification. So in small words, if you allocate your entire wealth in so many different asset classes, which are not same thing, same asset class, highly different asset classes, you should be able to eliminate diversify the risk. Now, as we talked so far, for which risk factor you should be compensated for? Systematic one, right? So this is the risk factor we should be compensated for. Now, how can we measure systematic? So the proxy, the method we want to call to measure systematic risk is beta. So if you're taking investment class, then we're going to talk about a lot about CAPM model and beta. But just to give you some heads up, what is a CAPM model or how to calculate beta? For any asset class, if you want to require some return or if you have an expectations, for the return in future years. It's a function of risk-free rate, which is treasury rates, right? Beta times expected return on the market, minus risk-free rate. So this factor is also known as market risk premium. So now if I short it down, you can think about risk factor beta times market risk premium. We know the definition of risk premium, right? Anything you earn on top of the risk-free rate is called risk premium. And this is something you earn on top of the risk-free rate from the market. That is market risk premium. Now, if your beta is 0, think out this way: the minimum value of beta is 0. There is the second component do not exist, right? What you're earning? Risk-free rate. If your beta getting positive, you're still earning some positive return. And this is for what? This is for taking market risk. This is for what? This is for taking market risk. Make sense? So from CAPM model, we know how to calculate beta, which is you're going to learn in investment class, but not in the principle of finance class. Now, how to interpret this beta? So beta could take value from anywhere 0 to anywhere 0, 1, whatever. Okay? When beta is 0, that means you have no market risk. And what does beta measures? Beta measures how risky, how volatile your portfolio or your asset is as compared to the market. As compared to the market, how risky, how volatile your asset or portfolio is as compared to the market. When beta is 1, you can think about your investment, your portfolio, your asset has the same amount of systematic risk as the overall market. So that's why beta of market is always 1. When you say beta of market, always 1. If you find any asset class that is having beta of 1, that means what? That asset is similar volatility like market. In future, if you look at the beta of energy companies, maybe ExxonMobil, Shell, something like that, they are better than 1. Because energy is a very good indicator of the economy or market. So their beta is very close to 1. If beta is less than 1, I think from 0 to 1 in this region, the asset or the portfolio you're talking about have less systematic risk than that. Or you can think of less risky, less volatile. When it's more than 1, what is the interpretation? The beta has more systematic risk than the overall market. So the idea is when we interpret beta, so we have to interpret how risky our portfolio or asset class is as compared to the market. Is it more risky, less risky, no risk, or does it have exactly the same risk like the market? Now, what is the definition of market? in general, in finance, when we talk about market, we basically refer to S&P 500 index. You can see the photo. This is the index made of 500 largest company of US. And those 500 companies basically covers almost 80 to 90% of the entire US economy. So that's why this is regarded as a market. Whenever we're trying to calculate the value of an asset, we're trying to calculate as compared to that index. So this is kind of a benchmark. So any questions, any thoughts so far? Now, in the last couple of classes, what we are learning that required return is given, right? Required return is given, and we expect we should earn at least that much from the project, right? Now, this is your required return to invest in a project. When you want to invest in project today, our required return is basically what? We should earn at least the risk-free rate, and then we should be compensated for the appropriate risk premium we have taken on this investment. Make sense? And that's why, if you want to invest in any project, this is the minimum you should earn. Minimum you should earn. End of the day, you may earn more. That is called realized or actually what you want. But this is the minimum you should earn when you're ready to make an investment. Make sense? Now, look at the table and you answer me these 3 questions. Look at this table, so you can easily find the answer. So what do you think? Which security has more total risk? Security K, why?
Was 0.3 times 0.95 is higher than 0.2.
Here's the we just look at the standard deviation. Total risk. When you talk about total risk, standard deviation. When you talk about the total risk, standard deviation, CQDK has 30% standard deviation. Which security has more systematic risk? Why? Absolutely. Now, what do you think about the third question? So this is coming from standard deviation, this is coming from beta. Yes. Security KY. Okay. So do you still think simplification is the answer? So which risk factor should be compensated? Total, systematic, or unsystematic? Which risk factor should be compensated for? Which risk factor should be compensated for? From the formula, if you look at the formula, which risk factor should be compensated for? Systematic. Okay. And which one has more systematic? So which one should have more expected return? If we see, because of high beta. When we talk about total risk measured by standard deviation, enter volatility of the application. But if you can diversify, you can eliminate some portion of total risk. And the portion is known as unsystematic or diversifiable, or farm specific risk. What you can't do, you cannot diversify systematic risk. And that's why you should be compensated for systematic risk. And now if you look carefully, when you talk about total risk, CQDK has 30% of standard deviation. That is more total risk. CQDC has 1.25 of beta, although less total risk, more beta. And that's why it should have more return. You cannot diversify systematic. It needs to be compensated. Make sense? These three? Okay. Any question? Beta, risk premium, total risk, systematic risk. Okay. Now this is a graphical representation. So if you look at this graph and look at the equation and what it talks so far, this is just a graphical representation, right? So when beta is 0, how much return you should expect when beta is 0? No, when beta is 0, you should at least expect this return. When beta is 0 here, beta is 0, no second component. You should at least expect risk-free rate. Now look here, beta is 0. This is the risk-free rate. Let's say, for this example, let's say the risk-free rate is this much. Beta is 0, you should expect this much. Now, if beta becoming positive, you expect a return to increase. By how much? Beta times market experience. Make sense? Equation graph there. Beta is 0, only expect risk-free. Beta is going up, expect more because of market experience. and how much beta your portfolio have. So that was the thing. If you are taking risk, how much per unit of systematic risk you are compensating? This is called reward to risk ratio. Reward to risk ratio for the systematic risk companies. If you look carefully at the graph, so look at the numerator, what it is trying to say. If you invest in asset A, if you invest in asset A, expected return, right? Minus risk-free rate. So that means excess return on asset A, right? Excess return on top of risk-free rate. Systematic risk of asset A. So this is trying to tell you, for taking 1 unit of systematic risk, how much excess return you are earning from asset A, also known as reward to risk ratio. Sometimes also known as slope. Of this graph. Make sense? So if you know the expected return of your asset A, if you also know the risk-free rate divided by beta of asset A, you can easily get to know how much excess return you're earning for taking 1 unit of systematic risk. When you talk about the entire economy in the equilibrium, it is proven that the reward to risk from investing in asset A should be equal to the reward to risk in investing in the market. They should be equal. Make sense? In the equilibrium, because think about this way: if any specific asset is giving you more reward, what do you want to do? You all want to invest on here and pull down the reward until you reach to the market level. You can borrow the idea from the bond valuation. When any bond is issued higher or lower than the market return, it has to be issued with premium or discount, right? So that they are fairly priced as compared to the market. So that's why in equilibrium, reward for taking systematic risk should be equal to the market. Any asset, in any asset, reward for taking systematic risk should be equal to the reward to taking systematic risk in the market. This is already talked about, right? This graph is almost the same thing of that graph. Same thing. But the difference is, as we learned, in the equilibrium, we'll be getting the market return, right? In equilibrium, reward for any systematic risk should be equal to market, right? In equilibrium. So that's why if we convert the same graph in the market model, this is known as security market. It is the same thing, but this is based on the market. This is known as security market. So what is a security market like? This is trying to tell you the relationship of the capital market when the beta is 0, you should earn this rate. And the market has always been of 1. So if you know the beta of market, how much expected return you should earn from the market. And this linear relationship, when you convert it to the market model, the market, known as security market line, SML, security market line, SML. Questions? So this is an example how to calculate expected return from the capital market. Now let's say in the economy, risk-free rate is 3.15%. In the economy, market risk premium is 7.5%. And data is given of different asset classes. What should be the expected return of all of these asset classes? C, KO, Intel, Bitcoin. I think this is Koch Industries. I don't know what is that. Koch Industries, Intel Corporation, Bitcoin. So what is the expected return? Risk-free rate plus beta times market experience. You have to be careful. A common mistake done by all the students. You guys got confused between expected return on the market and market experience. When you say expected return on the market, this is the raw return we are expecting from the market. When you say market risk premium, that is expected return on the market minus risk-free rate. Okay? Market risk premium. You can use the same rate times beta. That's it. But if I give you expected risk premium, then don't forget to subtract risk-free rate. Make sense? Don't forget to subtract risk-free rate. So don't get confused what is expected return on the market, what is market risk premium. They are different things. And look for what is given on the test. So if we have no questions so far, then do this sample problem. We're good to go. So I think the only thing you need maybe this formula, so. How much you got? Yeah. Ready? Next to you. Okay, so for problem one, we're having some viewers. Who wants to join next? Yes. Yes.
I got 14.6.
Right.
8%.
Okay.
I also lost 14.6.
You want to join the debate? I also have.
You got 14.6.
Number two. So you're talking about problem one, yes. So problem one, did you get 40.6? No, problem one, we got 6.67. Okay, 6.67. Okay. Who else for problem one? How much you got?
I got 8.
8. Okay, so we got multiple, yes. 6.6. No, I also have 8. Problem one? Yeah. Okay, so problem one, we are mostly getting 8 or 6.67, right? So how many of you got 8%? How many of you got 6.67? Most of you got 6.67. 6.67 has more votes. So what it is asking? Reward to risk ratio in equilibrium. Which formula we should use? Isaac? Okay, so in equilibrium, it should be this formula, right? And what beta? Beta,
Of the market.
okay, beta of the market, okay. Do we agree with this formula? Do we agree? Okay, now let's plug in. What is the expected rate on the market from this problem? 13, okay. Fixed rate, 5%. Beta,
Was. One.
beta. I got 1, anyone else? I got 1.2. Okay, what do you think?
The beta of the market is always one. The beta of this specific
Absolutely.
asset is 1.2.
Absolutely, beta of market is 1. Beta of this specific asset is 1.2. We are not talking about what is we are getting from this specific asset. We are talking about what should be in equilibrium, right? Because it doesn't matter what specific asset is giving you. In equilibrium, you have to reach here, market. So it should be 8%. Beta of market should always be.
But if it's at risk to return reward to risk ratio, excuse me, for the asset, then it should be.
Absolutely. Then it should be 1.2 or whatever beta of that asset is. Make sense?
What do you normally ask? Does it just depend? Or?
Just depends. So basically, see, both things are important. Why both things are important? Because when you talk about market, we're talking about a benchmark. We're talking about the benchmark. When you talk about any specific asset, we're talking about, okay, I have these options. So let's think about these specific assets, then compare with the benchmark. Make sense? So both are important. Both, because you can invest in both. You can invest also in market, you can also invest in specific asset, right? Both are important. But you have to be careful what I'm dealing with, what I'm trying to understand, what I'm trying to calculate. Make sense? Now, problem 2, who wants to help? Risk-free rate 5%, right? How much is beta? 1.2, 13 minus 5%, right? How much you got from there? 0.6. So be careful. What are you thinking of? Market or asset? Both are important. But it's tough to say which one is more important. Both are important. Any questions? So next class we are doing review and a quiz, right? Okay. See you in next class.